My name is Marlene Whitaker, and I am 82 years old. I live alone now, in a quiet retirement village just outside of Ashfield, Tennessee, in a white cottage with blue shutters and creaky wooden floors that remember every step I've ever taken. There's a single oak tree in my yard that's outlived both my husband and my knees. Every morning, I sit in my floral armchair by the window with a chipped mug of chamomile tea and pretend everything is just as it was. But today, something changed. For 40 years, I've carried a truth so heavy it warped my spine and twisted my heart. I didn't mean to lie. I only meant to protect. My husband, Walter, died on a stormy September evening, grasping my hand with the strength of a man who knew death was minutes away. His face pale, his eyes frightened, not for himself, but for what he was leaving behind. His voice was hoarse when he whispered, "Don't let them know, Marlene. It'll break them. Don't tell the kids. Don't tell anyone. Promise me." And I did. I promised. I kissed his forehead and told him I would guard that secret with my life. I meant it. I buried Walter the next week under the big elm tree behind our old farmhouse in Bradley County, where we had raised our 2 children, Silas and June. No one knew the truth he took with him into the ground. Only me. And ever since that day, I've been living a life that's not quite mine, every smile a mask, every birthday a performance, every "I'm fine" a lie carefully folded into a casserole dish. But now, something's happened. Earlier this morning, while sorting through an old box in the attic, one I hadn't dared open since we moved, I found something I never should have seen. An envelope. Yellowed with time, the handwriting barely legible, to be opened in case I fail. Inside was a confession. Not mine. His. And just like that, the secret I've kept buried for 4 decades clawed its way back to the surface, demanding breath. I sat on the attic floor with dust in my lungs and tears on my face, holding that letter like it was a live wire. My hands trembled. Because now, I'm not sure if I was protecting my family all these years. Or if I was protecting a lie. I walk slowly down the stairs, the letter pressed against my chest, and sit back in my chair by the window. The tea's gone cold, untouched. My fingers ache. My mind races. Do I tell them now? Do I burn it and carry the secret to my grave? Suddenly, a knock at the door. 3 slow taps. Then silence. I freeze. It's been years since someone came to see me unannounced. I stand, heart pounding, and peer through the peephole. My breath catches. It's Silas. And he's holding the same envelope. I hadn't seen Silas in nearly a year. He stood on my porch looking older than I remembered, gray at the temples, shadows beneath his eyes, a weight in his shoulders that hadn't been there before. He was always my quiet child. Stern like his father, sharp like my mother. But today, there was something different in his eyes. Not anger. Not sadness. Fear. "Hi, Mama," he said, holding up the envelope like a white flag. "We need to talk." I stared at the letter in his hand, then back at the one clutched in mine. My fingers were damp with sweat. My heart? A hammer inside my ribs. I nodded slowly. "Come in, sweetheart." The living room hadn't changed in 20 years, same green couch, same old bookshelf, same fading photo of Walter above the fireplace. We sat across from each other like strangers. Silas placed the envelope on the coffee table. "I found it in a box of Dad's things," he said. "I didn't even know we still had that shed behind the barn. It was buried under old tools and paint cans." I didn't speak. I couldn't. He opened the flap and pulled out the pages. "I read it," he whispered. "And I don't understand. Tell me it's not true." I looked down at my hands. Wrinkled. Shaking. Hands that had rocked him to sleep, mended skinned knees, clapped at graduations. Now those same hands had to carry the weight of the past. I swallowed hard. "I was hoping you'd never see that letter." Silas blinked. So, it's true? I closed my eyes. I could still hear Walter's voice from all those years ago. Don't let them know. It'll break them. I had to go back, 40 years back, to the night he first told me. It was late. Our children were teenagers then, Silas, quiet and observant, and June, wild and free like the wind that ran through her golden hair. Walter had just returned from a trip to Missouri, one of those old business runs that never quite made sense. When he came back, his hands were shaking. I remember it like it happened this morning. He sat at the edge of our bed, staring at the floor. I reached for his hand, and he pulled away. I did something, Marlene, he said. I thought he meant an affair. A gambling debt. Something sinful, but simple. But what he told me. It was nothing like that. Walter had been covering up a death, a man from his past, someone who had trusted him. A friend. An accident, he said. A deal gone wrong. But there was blood. And silence. And Walter walked away. Just walked away. I kept his wallet, Walter said that night. Buried it in the woods. No one ever found him. But if they did, our names would be in it. My name. He shook as he told me. Cried, even. I had never seen my husband cry. I didn't mean for it to happen, Marlene. But if the kids knew what I did, if the world knew, I'd lose everything. We'd lose everything. And just like that, my life split in two. Before the secret, and after. Now, sitting across from Silas, I looked into his eyes and saw the boy he once was, the boy who used to build forts from couch cushions and whisper, "I'll protect you, Mama," during thunderstorms. I couldn't lie to him anymore. I took a breath. It's true, I said softly. Your father made a mistake. A terrible one. And I swore I'd keep it secret. For you. For your sister. Silas closed his eyes and leaned back against the couch. He didn't speak for a long time. Outside, the wind rustled the leaves. Somewhere, a dog barked. The world kept turning, like it didn't care we were drowning in the past. Then he opened his eyes and asked, "What do we do now?" That question sat in the room like smoke. Because I didn't know. I had sacrificed everything, my peace, my youth, my marriage, for a secret I couldn't bury deep enough. And now the truth was crawling back from the grave. But before I could answer him, my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. Hello? A deep voice crackled through. Is this Marlene Whitaker? Yes, I said. There was a pause. Then, I think you know who I am. I've been looking for you for a long time. The line went dead. I stared at the phone like it had burned me. Silas stood up. Who was it? I couldn't find my voice. I simply looked at him and said. Someone who wasn't supposed to be alive. The phone slipped from my hand and hit the floor with a soft clack. I didn't pick it up. I couldn't. My heart pounded like a war drum in my chest, echoing against the silence in the room. I'd known fear before, real fear. When Walter first told me. When I held that secret so tight it nearly strangled me. When I walked through life pretending it never happened. But this was different. Because the man who called me should have been dead. Silas stared at me, his face pale. Mom? What did he say? I swallowed hard. My throat was dry. He said he's been looking for me. For you? Not Dad? I nodded slowly. For me. Silas sat back down, rubbing his jaw the way Walter used to when he was anxious. Who, Mom? Who would be looking for you after all these years? I hesitated. His name was Gideon Rusk. The name sat heavy in the room like a curse. Back in 1983, Gideon was Walter's old friend from his army days. They served together in Germany. After the war, Gideon came home with demons in his chest and fire in his blood. He drank too much. Fought dirty. But Walter trusted him. Said they had each other's backs. One night, Gideon showed up at our house, thin, twitchy, paranoid. He had a duffel bag and a revolver and said something about a deal gone wrong in St. Louis. He begged Walter to help him disappear. He was scared, said people were after him. Walter agreed. Said he owed him. But something happened that night. Walter came back from that trip without Gideon. He told me he buried him. By accident. Out of fear. It was self-defense, he kept saying. It wasn't supposed to happen. I never asked for details. I didn't want to know. I just helped him burn the clothes, wash the truck, lie to the kids. We never talked about it again. Until now. I saw his obituary, Mama, Silas said, confused. I remember. It was in the Bradley County Gazette. His sister identified the body. I shook my head. It was someone else. Walter made sure of it. He said if a body showed up, it would stop the search. Silas went silent. The shadows in his eyes deepened. Then who called you? I stood up, walked to the window, and stared out at the oak tree in the yard. The leaves rustled gently, golden in the afternoon sun. Everything looked normal. Peaceful. But inside me, the past was catching fire. If it's really him, I said, then Walter didn't kill him. He just vanished. And now he wants something. Silas picked up the envelope again. Maybe he wants to finish what started. I turned to face him. Or maybe he wants revenge. The next morning, the first sign came. A single piece of mail slipped through my door, no return address. I opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a photograph. An old photo of Walter, Gideon, and me, taken in 1974, at a 4th of July barbecue. We were smiling. Gideon had his arm around Walter's shoulder, holding a bottle of beer. My hair was dark then, tied back in a red scarf. The kids were just babies, playing in the background. On the back of the photo, written in bold red ink, were 4 chilling words. I remember everything, Marlene. I sat down hard in my chair, knees weak. The picture fluttered to the floor. Silas came rushing in. He looked at the photo, then at me. What do we do now? He whispered. I took a long breath. We find out what really happened that night, I said. And if Gideon's alive. Silas interrupted me, his voice low. Then it's time to find him. Because secrets don't stay buried forever. Not in this family. Not anymore. I never wanted Silas involved. But the truth has claws. Once it sinks in, it doesn't let go. That night, we sat at the kitchen table like detectives in a crime drama, the confession letter and the photograph between us. Outside, the Tennessee moon hung low like a tired eye watching through the kitchen window. The house creaked with the wind. My hands wrapped around a lukewarm mug of coffee I wasn't drinking. Silas flipped the envelope over again and again. You said Gideon disappeared in Missouri? I nodded slowly. Just outside of Rolla, near a gas station off Highway 63. Walter said they got into a fight. Gideon pulled a gun. Walter got the upper hand. Silas leaned forward. And that's where he left the body? That's what he told me, I whispered. He tapped his fingers on the table. We need to go there. If there's anything left, records, witnesses, it might give us answers. Or at least a trail. I sighed. Silas, I'm 82. I can't just hop in a car and chase ghosts across state lines. He gave me a look that reminded me so much of his father, firm, stubborn, unblinking. Then I'll go. I'll drive. You'll be safe with me. I didn't want to go back to that place. But the thought of letting Silas face it alone made my stomach twist. No. This was my burden. My secret. My promise. And now it was our truth to chase. 2 days later, we crossed the Missouri border. The road to Rolla was long and forgettable, the kind of highway that blurs into the sky after a while. We passed empty motels, rusted diners, and gas stations that hadn't changed since 1980. It was like driving through a frozen memory. We arrived just before sunset. The gas station Walter mentioned was still there, Eddie's Fuel and Feed, faded red sign, gravel lot, 2 crooked pumps. The man behind the counter was in his 60s, wiry with yellowed teeth and a thick southern drawl. He squinted at me. "You ain't from around here." "No," I said, heart pounding. "But I was here once. A long time ago. My husband, he knew a man named Gideon Rusk. Would have been around 1983. Ring any bells?" He scratched his neck. "Rusk, that name's familiar. Had a fight out behind the station, I think. Lot of noise. Cops came. Never found no body. Folks said he skipped town." I swallowed. "Did anyone ever come back looking for him?" He shrugged. "Maybe once. Big fella in a brown suit. Real pushy. Asking about a duffel bag. Had a badge, but didn't act like no cop I ever seen." Silas and I exchanged glances. After thanking the man, we drove to a cheap roadside motel. Room 6 smelled like old smoke and bleach. The curtains didn't close all the way. That night, while Silas slept, I lay awake staring at the ceiling fan spinning like a slow clock. And then I remembered it. A house Walter once told me about. A cabin, really, on the outskirts of Devil's Hollow, a rural patch just south of Rolla. He said it belonged to Gideon's uncle. That was the fallback place, he said, in case things went south. Walter never mentioned it again. The next morning, we found it on an old map in the motel's lobby, Cooper Creek Road, barely a line. We followed it down a dirt path until trees swallowed the sun. The woods grew thick and quiet, the air still. And then we saw it. A cabin. Weathered. Gray. Slumped to one side like it was trying to disappear. We stepped out of the car slowly. "Are we sure about this?" Silas asked. "No," I said. "But we've come too far to turn back now." The door creaked open with a groan. Inside, everything was covered in a thick coat of dust. Cobwebs hung like curtains. But it wasn't empty. A chair. A cot. A lantern. And a photograph nailed to the wall. It was a picture of Walter. Younger. In uniform. Smiling. With the words, "Debt unpaid," carved into the wood below it. Silas stared at it. "Mom, he's been here. Recently." My mouth went dry. "Then he never left Missouri. He's been hiding all this time." Suddenly, Silas's phone buzzed. A text. Unknown number. It said, "I see you found the house. Good. Let's talk." Attached was a location pin. My blood ran cold. "He's watching us," I whispered. Silas looked up from the phone, jaw clenched. "We need to end this. Once and for all." And I knew, in that moment, there was no going back. The secret was no longer ours to carry. It belonged to whoever was waiting at the end of that pin. I always believed guilt was a quiet thing. A shadow you carried behind you. But guilt, real guilt, has a voice. It scratches behind your ears, whispers in your dreams, and eventually drags you back to the place it all began. That's what I felt as Silas and I drove toward the pin on his phone, an abandoned barn outside of a ghost town called Tanner's Ridge, population maybe 15, if the dead count. The road was rough. The sky overcast. The trees pressed in like silent judges. Silas didn't say a word. His knuckles gripped the steering wheel tight. I could feel the storm inside him. My son, the protector. The same boy who once cried when he crushed a butterfly by accident. Now, he was walking straight into the lion's den. And I'd dragged him there. When we arrived, the barn looked more like a skeleton: collapsed roof, rusted sheet metal walls, weeds choking the foundation. But something was off. A single truck, black, spotless, and humming, was parked beside it. "Someone's here," Silas said, stepping out. "Wait," I said. "Let me go first." He looked at me, torn. "You sure?" "No," I whispered. "But I have to." The barn creaked when I pushed the door open. It smelled like old hay and wet wood. My shoes crunched over gravel and glass. Then I saw him. Standing in the back near the beams, Gideon Rusk. He hadn't aged like the rest of us. He wore it hard. Skin like leather. A crooked nose that looked freshly broken. Gray stubble, long coat. But those eyes? Still sharp. Still cruel. Still burning with the fire I remembered from that night in 1983. "You came," he said, voice low and hoarse. "Took you long enough." I stood still, heart galloping. "You're supposed to be dead." He gave a dry, humorless laugh. "A lot of people think that. Including your husband. God rest his lying soul. What do you want?" He stepped forward. "Justice. Or revenge. I haven't decided yet." I didn't flinch. "You disappeared. Walter thought you were gone for good. You pulled a gun on him. And he buried me alive," Gideon snapped. The words hit like a slap. I wasn't dead, Marlene. He left me there, bleeding and half-conscious. By the time I crawled out of that ditch, he was gone. And so was my life. He started pacing like a caged animal. I lost everything. My reputation. My name. I went underground, disappeared for decades. You know how hard it is to live without a past? To be a ghost in your own country? I stayed calm. Then why come back now? He turned, eyes narrowing. Because Walter's dead. And I want the truth to come out. I want the world to know who he really was. A coward. A liar. And a killer. Silas stepped in behind me, his voice sharp. "You think destroying his memory makes you the good guy?" Gideon laughed again. "There are no good guys, boy. Only survivors." I stepped between them. "What do you want from us?" He held up a folder. Thick. Sealed. "In here," he said, "is everything. The real story. Walter's letters. Photos. Statements. If I hand this to the right people, your family name is Ash. Your grandchildren will grow up in shame." Silas took a step forward. "So, this is blackmail?" "No," Gideon said, calmly. "This is redemption. I want one thing. Public truth. A televised confession. Your mother. Camera. Microphone. No lies. No edits." I froze. "You want me to tell the world what Walter did?" He nodded. "You were his wife. His shield. Now you'll be the mirror. The truth's got a cost, Marlene. It always has." I looked at Silas. He looked broken, his father's legacy, the life we built, our family, dangled in the air like a noose. Then Gideon added, almost softly, "Or I dropped this file anonymously to every major news outlet in the country." He tossed it onto a hay bale and walked toward the door. "You've got 1 week." Then he was gone. Back in the motel, I stared at that folder like it was ticking. "What are we going to do?" Silas whispered. I didn't know. If I confessed, I'd destroy the myth of the man my children admired, the man my grandchildren were named after. But if I stayed silent, the truth would be twisted by a man with nothing to lose. And the worst part? Maybe he was right. Walter wasn't a monster. He was scared. He was human. But the truth doesn't care about intentions. Only facts. Now I had 7 days to decide. Protect the lie, or let it all burn.
The drive back to Tennessee felt like moving through water, slow, heavy, and unreal. Silas didn't speak much. Neither did I. The folder sat between us in the car, sealed, humming with weight neither of us wanted to touch. Each mile we drove, I imagined it bursting open, filling the car with pieces of Walter's past like smoke from a fire we never put out. I was quiet because I was scared. Scared of what it would mean, for my children, for my grandchildren, for the people who still looked at our family with pride. But the worst part? I was scared of myself. Because a small part of me believed Gideon was right. Maybe it was time the truth came out. Still, I didn't open the folder. Not yet. When we got home, the house felt smaller. Colder. Like the walls had heard everything and were waiting to see what we'd do next. Silas helped me in, then went straight upstairs, saying he needed to clear his head. I didn't argue. I sat in the den, my old knees aching, the afternoon sun casting long shadows across the hardwood floor. The folder was on the table now. Still sealed. I stared at it. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I poured myself a drink. Just one. I sat there, swirling that amber liquid in the glass, thinking about the man I married. The father of my children. The man who carried shame like a second skin. Who kissed me goodnight every night, even after the lie. Walter wasn't evil. But he did something unforgivable. And I helped him bury it. Suddenly, I heard the front door creak. Footsteps. Soft. Hesitant. Then a voice, low, nervous. Grandma? I turned. It was Bea, my granddaughter. 16. Big eyes. Purple streak in her hair. Always too smart for her own good. I saw Silas's truck outside, she said, stepping in. He looked upset. Is everything okay? I tried to smile, but it didn't reach my eyes. Just, family things, sweetheart. She looked down and then back at me. Can I sit? I nodded, and she curled up on the couch like she used to when she was little. After a moment, she spoke again. Can I tell you something weird? Of course. I had this dream last night. You were in it. But you weren't you. You were younger. And you were running. From something. Or someone. I don't know. You were crying. I tried to call out to you, but you didn't hear me. My throat tightened. She leaned forward. When I woke up, I had this strange feeling. Like something big was coming. Like something in our family was going to change. I stared at her, stunned. It was like she'd opened a window into my soul. Bea, I whispered. There's something I need to tell you. But I don't know if I should. She looked at me, not with fear, not with judgment. Just love. You've never lied to me, she said. You're the one person I've always trusted. If there's something you've been holding, you don't have to carry it alone anymore. And just like that, the dam inside me cracked. Not completely. But enough for the water to seep through. I didn't tell her everything. Not yet. But I told her about a man named Gideon. A man who had once been part of our family's life. A man who had returned, angry and broken. Bea didn't flinch. She just took my hand. You always taught me, she said, that doing the right thing isn't about how it feels. It's about how it frees people. Maybe this secret has been holding all of us down. After she left, I sat in the quiet for a long time. Then, with trembling fingers, I finally broke the seal on the folder. Inside were pages of letters, some written by Gideon, some by Walter. Photographs. An old cassette tape labeled Confession, 1983. And at the very bottom, a death certificate. Walter's. But not the official one. This one was handwritten. Faked. Stamped with Gideon's signature. He'd forged Walter's death once before. And suddenly, a horrifying thought hit me. What if Gideon had done it again? What if he faked his own death to disappear? What if the man we just spoke to wasn't Gideon at all? I called Silas down, and together, we reviewed the documents. And there, tucked into the margin of one of the pages, was a receipt from a nursing home in Arkansas. Patient name, Gideon J. Rusk. Date, March 2009 to October 2019. Status, deceased. The man we met at the barn? Wasn't Gideon. He was someone else. Someone pretending. I sat back, shaking. Then who did we meet? Who wants this truth exposed? And why? Silas's eyes darkened. Someone else was there that night, Mom. Someone we forgot. I stared at the file. And one name circled in red at the top of a letter stopped my heart. Elias Boone. Walter's army bunkmate. The third man no one ever talked about. And the man who'd just walked back into our lives with a mask and a mission. I had sacrificed everything for Walter's secret. But now I was beginning to realize. I hadn't even known the full truth. The name Elias Boone hadn't passed my lips in 40 years. Not once. Not even in whispers. Walter made me promise on his deathbed, don't mention Elias. Ever. He's the kind of man who waits in the shadows, then strikes when you forget he exists. And I had. I kept that promise like it was scripture. Even when I wanted to scream it into the wind. Now, it was all unraveling, and the shadows were speaking. Silas sat across from me at the kitchen table, the opened folder between us. Every letter, every scribbled note, every forged receipt felt like a map leading to something we weren't ready to see. And there it was, Elias Boone. Circled. Underlined. Again, and again. How much do you know about this man? Silas asked. I swallowed. Enough to lose sleep for 40 years. It all started in 1983, the night that changed everything. Walter, Gideon, and Elias had served together in Vietnam. Brothers in arms. They'd seen things, done things, they never talked about, even to me. But Elias. He was different. Quiet. Strange. Walter once called him a ghost with a heartbeat. They reconnected years later, after the war, when we'd just moved to the farm outside of Raleigh County. Walter was trying to rebuild, start fresh. Then one day, Elias showed up unannounced. Said he had a business proposal. A warehouse deal. It wasn't legal. Walter knew that. So did Gideon. But Elias made it sound like it was the only way out of the hole we were in. We had debts. 3 children under 10. No health insurance. No safety net. One deal. One night. No one would get hurt. But that's not what happened. That night, something went wrong. Someone showed up who wasn't supposed to. A young man, barely 20. Local. Curious. He caught them unloading crates. He ran. They chased him. Elias was the one who pulled the trigger. Not Walter. Not Gideon. Elias. He killed that boy. And Walter, God rest him, helped bury the truth. Literally. Now Elias was back. Pretending to be Gideon. Pushing me toward confession. But why? What's he after? Silas asked. Is he trying to destroy us? Or cover his tracks? I thought for a moment, then reached into the folder again. Pulled out the tape marked, Confession, 1983. I think we're missing something, I said. Something Walter left behind. We found an old cassette player in the attic. Dusty. Worn. I slipped the tape in with shaking fingers. And then, his voice. Walter. Younger. Shaky. Desperate. If you're hearing this, it means I'm gone. And if he's back, if Elias Boone is back, then I failed. I tried to protect you. Tried to hide it all. But there are things you can't bury. Things that crawl their way to the surface when you least expect it. It wasn't me. I didn't kill that boy. It was Elias. And I tried to stop him, God, I did. But Gideon helped cover it too. He was scared. We all were. I took the blame so our kids wouldn't carry the weight. So you wouldn't. I told Gideon to disappear. I told him I'd carry it. But Elias. I think he's been waiting. If he's back, Marlene, don't trust him. Not with anything. Not even your silence. The tape clicked off. Silas sat back, stunned. So, all these years, you thought Dad killed someone, he said slowly. But he didn't. No, I whispered. But he still buried the body. He still kept the secret. And so did I. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the den, staring at the dark windows, wondering how many lies had become part of our family's bloodline. Walter had protected his children by destroying his name in private, and I had carried that destruction on my shoulders like a cross. But now? Now Elias Boone wanted the truth to come out, but twisted, ugly, poisoned. He wasn't after justice. He was after vengeance. And I knew why. Because the boy he killed, his name was David Harlan. A local farmhand. Sweet. Honest. He wasn't supposed to be there that night. And he was Elias's nephew. The next morning, Silas came down, holding his phone. You're not going to believe this, he said, pale. He turned the screen toward me. A new YouTube channel, posted 2 hours ago. No name. No description. Just a video titled, What Marlene Weller Isn't Telling You, the Raleigh County Cover-Up. And in the thumbnail. Me. A photo from my church group. Smiling. I clicked the video. It hadn't gone viral yet, but the view count was ticking up fast. In it, a distorted voice said, She's not who she says she is. She's kept this secret for decades. A crime was committed in 1983, and a boy died. Marlene Weller helped cover it up. But the truth is coming. Then came a picture of the barn. Then the burned warehouse. Then, a blurred-out photo of my children. Silas slammed the laptop shut. We have to stop this, he said. We have to fight back. And in that moment, I knew what I had to do. I wouldn't let my children carry this curse anymore. I wouldn't let Elias write our ending. I stood, steadier than I'd felt in weeks. Call B, I said. Tell her to bring her camera. Tell her grandma's ready to tell a story. He blinked. You're serious? I nodded. I'm done hiding. I never thought the world would know my name this way. Not through church bake sales or town parades. Not for the pies I baked or the years I worked at the school library. But for a secret. A dark, ugly, bloody secret buried under 40 years of silence. And now the whole internet knew, or would know soon. Thanks to Elias Boone. I stood in front of the mirror in the hallway. My hands, old and lined, were shaking. I wore the same blue sweater I wore when Walter proposed to me on the church lawn in 1967. Back when life was simple. When love felt eternal and the past was something you could always outrun. Now I was preparing to do the one thing I never thought I'd do. Tell the truth. On camera. B set up her phone on a tripod, her hands careful, her voice quiet. You don't have to do this, Grandma, she said. People online are cruel. They don't know you. I looked at her, my sweet granddaughter, with her fire and her heart, and I smiled. That's the problem, baby. They only know what a liar told them. It's time they heard it from someone who's been living it. She nodded and stepped back. Whenever you're ready. I took a deep breath and sat down. The phone began recording. And for the first time in 40 years, I began to speak freely. My name is Marlene Weller. I'm 83 years old. And I've been keeping a secret that's been burning through my soul since 1983. I looked straight into the lens. My husband, Walter, was a good man. A war veteran. A father. A man who, like many, made one bad choice and spent the rest of his life trying to make up for it. But he didn't kill anyone. I paused, swallowing the lump in my throat. There was a warehouse. There was a night. And yes, there was a death. A young man named David Harlan lost his life, and 3 men were there, my husband Walter, his war brother Gideon, and a man named Elias Boone. It was Elias who pulled the trigger. And it was Elias who disappeared. My voice broke. And it was me who kept that truth locked in my chest all these years, because Walter begged me to. He said it would break our children. Bea wiped a tear from her cheek behind the camera. I went on, letting the words fall like rain. I'm not asking for sympathy. I'm not running from what I did. I helped bury the truth. I helped bury a boy. And every birthday, every Christmas, every hug from my children, I felt the ghost of that night. But now Elias Boone has returned. He's pretending to be Gideon. He's spreading lies online to cover his own crimes. And I won't let him hurt my family any longer. I looked into the lens with all the strength I could find. If you believe anything, believe this: I loved my husband. I loved my children. And everything I did for them. But I won't die with this lie on my soul. I ended the video with a final breath and a whispered, I'm sorry. Bea clicked stop. The silence that followed was heavy. We posted the video on Bea's channel, one she usually used for makeup tutorials and funny dog clips. Within an hour, the comments started rolling in. You're braver than half the country. The truth hurts, but it's the truth. This Elias guy sounds dangerous. Protect her. She's lying. Just trying to shift the blame. Some were supportive. Some were vile. But most, they were listening. For the first time, I felt the weight start to shift. Like a crack had formed in the mountain I'd been carrying. But that peace lasted only until the next morning. Silas woke me with a knock on the door, his face pale. Mom, he said, holding up his phone. You need to see this. Elias had posted another video. This time, he wasn't hiding behind a distorted voice. He showed his face. Or the face of a man I barely recognized. Older, worn, but it was him. And he called himself the real survivor of the 1983 cover-up. In the video, he said, Marlene Weller is rewriting history. I was there. I saw what happened. Her husband pulled the trigger. I tried to stop it. And now she's trying to paint me as the villain. But there are others who know the truth. And if she wants a war, she's going to get one. He held up something in his hand. A black envelope. With the right judge, this envelope could end her life in court, he said, cold. Tick-tock, Marlene. Silas paused the video. Do you think he has something real? I stood slowly. No. I think he's bluffing. But even a bluff can ruin a person if the world believes it. I walked over to the window. The sky was darkening. Rain rolled in across the hills. It was all unraveling. And he was pulling every string he had. But I still had one card left. I called Bea and Silas into the room. I need to go back, I said. To the farm. To the place where it all happened. Bea blinked. Why? Because there's one more piece of the story no one knows. Not even Walter. Silas narrowed his eyes. You mean the grave? I nodded slowly. I know where David Harlan is buried. And for the first time in 40 years, I said the words out loud. I was there when they moved the body. The rain came heavy that night. It tapped against the windshield in nervous rhythm as Silas drove us down winding country roads that hadn't changed in 4 decades. The trees bowed overhead like mourners in procession, and each mile brought me closer to the truth I had buried, literally, beneath layers of guilt, moss, and mud. I hadn't seen the old farm in years. After Walter died, I sold it to a couple from Asheville. They painted the barn red, built a deck on the east side of the house, and turned our broken past into something that looked like a home. But under the ground, beneath all the renovations and rose bushes, one thing had never moved. David Harlan. And tonight, I was going to show my children where we left him. Silas parked down the road where the woods were still thick. Bee followed behind us, flashlight in hand, bundled in a raincoat. The mud sucked at our shoes, and the smell of wet pine hit sharp in my nostrils, just like it had that night in 1983. I led them past the barn, behind the old storage shed, where the property sloped down into a thicket of trees and blackberry bramble. This is it, I whispered. Right here. We stood beneath a crooked elm, its roots bulging from the soil like veins. He's here? Bee asked, eyes wide. I nodded.
They moved the body 2 nights after the warehouse burned. Gideon helped Walter dig. I stayed behind and watched. I was supposed to keep an eye out, make sure no one came. But I wasn't just watching. I was memorizing. I needed to remember. In case one day the truth needed to be found. I knelt and traced the bark of the tree. They buried him 5 feet down, wrapped in a blue tarp. Elias wasn't there. He ran. Like he always did. Silas took out a shovel from the back of the truck. We're digging. Yes, I said. We need to bring him up. Not for revenge. Not for drama. For peace. His family never got a grave. They never got closure. And if Elias wants a war, we'll fight it with truth. Not threats. The first hour was silent, except for the rain and the sound of the shovel biting the earth. Bee stayed back, filming quietly, only for evidence, she said. Not for YouTube. Not yet. Silas hit something hard just after midnight. A crack. Then a pause. Then he pulled back the shovel, and there it was. Blue. Tarp. Faded and torn at the edges. We all froze. Should we call the police now? Bee asked. I nodded. Yes. No more hiding. Let them come. She walked back to the truck for signal. But that's when I heard it. A crunch. A branch. A step. I turned around, and there he was. Elias Boone. Standing in the dark, soaked from head to toe, a pistol in one hand and something shiny in the other. Always knew you'd come back here, Marlene, he said. His voice was older, but the venom was still there. You had that look. That mouth. Too curious for your own good. Silas stepped between us. Put it down, Elias. He chuckled. You know what happens if this gets out? I lose everything. My name, my new life, my leverage. Good, I said, my voice steady. You don't deserve it. He raised the gun slightly. Not aiming. Not yet. Just enough to remind us who he thought he was. I got offers, you know, he said. Podcasts. True crime nuts. One guy said he'd pay me to recreate the scene. People love a good villain now and then. You are the villain, I said. But I'm done being the victim. Then BEA's voice rang out from the hill. Cops are on their way, Elias. You've got minutes. He twitched. His face twisted. He turned, ready to run again. But this time, I didn't let him. I stepped forward. Right in his path. And I looked him in the eyes with every ounce of the fury, grief, and strength I'd buried all these years. You can't run from this anymore. He raised the gun at me. Move, he hissed. Silas stepped forward, too. Then B. Flashlight aimed like a sword. We're not scared of you, she said. Not anymore. The moment froze. Rain pouring. My breath tight. Then. Sirens. Lights. Red. Blue. Justice. Elias's hand twitched, but he didn't shoot. He dropped the gun in the mud. The police cuffed him beside the open grave. He didn't speak. Didn't resist. They asked who we were. What we found. We told them everything. No more lies. They uncovered the tarp. The remains. And confirmed the identity of David Harlan 2 weeks later through DNA. The news picked up the story. They called it The Grave Beneath the Elm. They praised me. Condemned me. Picked apart my video confession like it was poetry and poison all at once. Some called me brave. Others called me a traitor. But no one called me silent anymore. At the funeral, I stood alone near David's grave. His family had passed years ago. There was no one left to mourn him but me. I'm sorry, I whispered. We should have spoken sooner. But I'm here now. And the world knows your name. I left a white rose on the casket. That night, back at home, Bea hugged me tight. You did it, Grandma, she said. You kept the promise. Then you broke it. And both were the right thing. Silas made dinner. Chicken pot pie. Just like I used to make. We ate in peace. But before bed, I walked to the window, looked out at the stars, and whispered one last thing to Walter. You were wrong, love. The truth didn't break them. It made them stronger. The morning after Elias Boone was arrested, the phone never stopped ringing. News stations, reporters, social media alerts, all begging for another interview, another angle, another bit of the story. But I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The world had already gotten what it wanted, the truth. And somehow, after all these years of silence, the truth felt like the only thing that belonged to me. Silas and Bea were with me every day, making sure I didn't get caught up in the madness. They'd brought over old photos, shared stories about Walter, about how much he loved me despite the mistakes. We cried, we laughed, we finally let go of the weight that had crushed our family. But the one thing we hadn't found was Walter's final letter. I'd searched through every box, every drawer, every old piece of paper in the attic. It was the one thing I hadn't been able to part with, the thing I couldn't get rid of. The last gift from the man who had carried so much guilt for our family. I thought it was gone. Lost forever. But as Bea sifted through a pile of old envelopes, I saw it. A small, tattered envelope, marked in my husband's familiar handwriting. For Marlene, when the time is right. I opened it slowly. The letter inside was written in ink that had long since faded, but the words still rang clear. Marlene, if you're reading this, then I'm gone. And you're doing what you've always done, keeping things together. But it's time, love. The truth is too heavy to carry alone, and I'm sorry for asking you to do it for so long. I know you're scared. I know you've been carrying the weight of what happened, not just with me, but with the others. But you never had to carry this, Marlene. You never had to hold it all. Elias Boone has always been a shadow, and shadows can't be defeated by keeping them in the dark. You've shown that. Now it's your time to live free. You're stronger than you think. Whatever happens, know that you've done the right thing. And if I'm wrong about this, if letting the truth come out means we lose our family, then I'll take that burden with me, because I love you. And I'll be waiting for you on the other side. And, Marlene? Promise me you'll never stop telling the truth. No matter what. Tears stung my eyes as I read the last line. I hadn't realized how much I'd needed to hear his voice, even after all these years. That afternoon, the phone rang again. A number I didn't recognize. I answered. Marlene Weller, the voice on the other end said. It was calm, professional. This is District Attorney Allison Drake. I wanted to personally inform you that we're pressing full charges against Elias Boone for the murder of David Harlan, as well as charges of obstruction and conspiracy for his role in the cover-up. My heart pounded, but I stayed calm. Thank you, I said, my voice steady. I've been waiting for this. I know it's been difficult, but you've done the right thing. We've received several statements, but your confession and evidence will carry the case. We'll make sure justice is served. I'm glad, I said. I've waited long enough. The truth had been given. Elias was going to face the consequences, and David Harlan's family, who'd been robbed of a son, would finally get what they deserved, justice. As weeks passed, the media storm calmed. The interviews slowed, and the town started to return to its ordinary rhythm. Elias went to trial. I didn't attend. I didn't need to. I'd already paid the price for my silence. But what I didn't expect was the way my family changed. Silas and Bea became closer than ever. Silas, once distant and disillusioned by our family's past, started to see the man his father had been, a man who had made a horrible mistake but tried to right it his whole life. Bea, too, grew up in ways I hadn't expected. She wasn't just my granddaughter anymore. She was a voice of courage in her own right. I began to believe that, after everything, our family was stronger than it had ever been. 2 months later, we held a small memorial for Walter. The people who had loved him showed up, friends from church, old neighbors who remembered the good things. We didn't speak much of the past, but there was comfort in knowing that the truth had been set free. I stood in front of his grave, the words of his final letter echoing in my mind. I'm here, Walter, I whispered to the wind. I'm here, and I'm free. The last letter I received wasn't from the authorities or the media. It came from David Harlan's mother. It was short. Handwritten. Simple. Thank you for bringing our boy home. For making it right. We didn't expect an apology, but we got one anyway. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. In that moment, I knew I'd done the one thing I had avoided for so long. I had stopped running. I had let the world know the truth, and in doing so, I found peace. I spent my days now writing letters to my grandchildren, telling them stories of their grandfather. Stories of love, regret, and redemption. I taught Bea how to bake the pies Walter loved so much, and Silas came by every week to visit, just to check in. As for me, I was finally at peace with myself. I had carried a secret for 40 years. I had made sacrifices that nearly destroyed me. But in the end, I didn't just survive. I won. And the truth? Well, the truth had set me, and my family, free.